Hello my bookish friends, welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, and today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in February. Since we are already in March, before we get into those books, I do want to remind you that for the Midnight Society Book Club this month, we are going to be reading The Drift by CJ Tudor. I'm going to be joined live on my channel on April 1st at 2 p.m. Central by the lovely Ashley from Ashley's Little Library. So you still have plenty of time to pick this up, to read this with us, to hang out in the live show and discuss it with us. I'm nervous because this is really, really highly anticipated for me. So I'm really hoping Ashley and I both love it because we do both love CJ Tudor. And I think as of next month, I'm going to start back doing TBRs so that I can give you a better heads up about the book club books. This month was
kind of a bummer, I'm not gonna lie.
Here's the thing. I want to find that one. I want to find that one that nobody's talking about, that I can tell you about and you can discover it with me. I want the hidden gems. That's what I want. I've realized that by going on this hunt, I'm going to find a lot of flops along the way, which is unfortunate. So I felt like in February, I did kind of pick up a lot of kind of random books. A lot of those didn't work for me. So unfortunately, that's just how it goes. I think in the month of March, so far at least, I am picking up just books that I am drawn to, that I think I'm going to like, and it's making me feel better. But let's talk about these ones first. I read 9 books this month. The breakdown is as follows. I have 1 1-star book, 4 2-star books, or in the 2-star range. Ugh, that's rough. I have 1 book in the 3-star range, and then I have 3 books in the 4-star range. No 5-star books this month, unfortunately, but those 3 4-star books I really, really did enjoy, and so I'm excited to tell you about those. As usual, I'm going to start with my lowest rated books and work my way up to the highest rated of the month, so hang in for those. I'm also going to put my other social media information down here if you want to come hang out with me on other social media platforms. Also in the comments down below, let me know what was your favorite read of the month of February. And with all of that being said, let's get into the books. I'm gonna start out with my 1-star book, which thank God there's only 1 of them, but this one's a doozy. And I'm gonna try to go through these first ones relatively quickly because I just don't like hating on books. And you know, if I'm giving it 1 star, you already know I don't recommend it. Anything less than 3 stars, I don't recommend. So I'm gonna try to get through these quickly so we can get to the good ones. Starting off, we have Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan. This is my 1-star book. It's shiny. This is a library edition. I picked this up for my video where I read books like Black Mirror. This one was a total flop for me, big disappointment. This is set in an alternative 1980s London. It's kind of an alternate history, and so there's all of these different things that are happening that are more advanced than we are now. So even though it's technically in the past, it has some futuristic elements. So I do think this one did hit that Black Mirror prompt, but I just didn't like the book. We're following Charlie, who is kind of dodging full-time employment. He sinks his money into schemes whenever he can, and he's not really successful in that. He's in love with his upstairs neighbor, Miranda. He comes into some money from his mother who left it to him, and he decides to buy Adam, who is this AI, this artificial intelligence robot designed by Alan Turing in this alternative history where Alan Turing lived into his 70s. Charlie thinks that if he and Miranda kind of make up the personality of Adam together, that it will be like their little love child, that he will somehow like sway her into being with him. And then it turns into this like love triangle type thing because Adam falls in love with Miranda as well, and so it gets a little bit awkward. Miranda has secrets. Honestly, the plot was disappointing. It really went nowhere. I think what this author was trying to say with this was some kind of discussion about that fine line between humanity and machines. Can machines understand the human heart? Can they love somebody? I don't think that was accomplished though. I don't think he did what he set out to do. I think he got really excited about this alternate history that he forgot to write a plot, because there's basically no plot in this book. There are a little bit of more details in there in the kind of secret past of Miranda, which are actually kind of problematic in my opinion, about sexual assault and the way that it's handled. These two main characters are super boring, Charlie and Miranda. They're just boring people. And this had so many opportunities to take it there, to go there, and even hinted at it. I mean, it's called Machines Like Me. So here I'm thinking that either Charlie or Miranda are also going to end up being a machine. And that's why we're like, oh my God, we couldn't tell because they're so human and this and that. But no, that was not a thing. And they hinted at it throughout the book, but it just never came into fruition. It was a mess. It was a mess. I wanted to give this the benefit of the doubt, and so I finished it. I really should have just DNF'd this one. It was not good. The ending, it was so awkward. I think maybe if you are from England or thereabouts, you might have a little bit more interest in this, because for me, a lot of it was like, I don't know like the actual history. I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true. I don't know the actual history of England as well as I do like from the States. And so some of the stuff just went right over my head. So I think if you are from England, you're going to probably enjoy this a little bit more than I did, but for me, it's a 1 star. That's all I'm going to say about it. Let's move on. Moving on to my 2-star books. The first of which was the Midnight Society book club pick. Unfortunately, it is Plastic Monsters by Daniel J. Volpe. I did not love this book. I felt like I was a little bit bamboozled on the description of this because it sounded so up my alley. It sounded like it was going to be this really feminist, deep, rich commentary on beauty and the competition that women feel they have against one another and why that is the case. But unfortunately, it did not touch on the why at all. It was clearly from a man's perspective, so clearly from a man's perspective. I really don't think he needed to write this book. There is another book coming out with the same kind of themes that I'm really excited about. I think it comes out in September, October, September, somewhere around there, by Mona Awad, called Rouge. And this hits a lot of the same themes. I may have to pick this for a book club pick because I think that's going to do what this one did not do for me. But anyway, we're following Pamela Rose. She is obsessed with beauty. We have different chapters. Some of them are in her present day and some of them flash back to when she was in high school. Kind of Carrie vibes there, where these girls are just so terrible and mean to her and she wants revenge. She wants more than anything to be beautiful. And in current day, she works in this little office. This other woman comes in one day with a new set of boobs and it sends her off the deep end. She loses her shit because this woman was already beautiful and now she's perfect and she can't handle that. And then we're also following Dr. Joseph DeBiro, who used to make art out of humans and plastic. He was a plastic surgeon, but he went to jail because of the really disgusting, raunchy shit that he did to these people while they were out. They're going to meet up to create this monster, this beautiful monster, this plastic monster out of Pamela Rose. That's the general gist of it. I do feel that this concept that women are in direct competition with one another deserves the spotlight. It deserves to be highlighted, but I don't think this was the right voice to do it. The body horror in here was very effective. I'll give it that. The body horror was definitely gross, but just some of the language used was not necessary. The C word over and over and over again was not necessary. I have the live show posted on my channel. If you want the full in-depth discussion, you can always go back and watch that. But I think that's about as deep as I want to go into this one. I think I'm about done with this book. This next book I'm really sad to say I did not like. I gave this one 2 stars as well, and that is episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. Oof, this was my first read by this author. It should have been perfect for me. It should have been like a 5-star read for me. Somehow that got disjointed somewhere within this text and it just did not work for me. And I have heard a lot of people that are really enjoying this. So don't count it out necessarily on my account, but I'll tell you why I didn't like it. First, let's talk about what it's about. We're following the 13th episode of a ghost hunting reality TV show called Fade to Black. This is led by a husband and wife team. He has had experiences in his childhood with ghosts, and so he's a full-on believer. She is more of the technical side. She is the skeptic. She is the scientist. So together they form this team. They hunt for ghosts. They get access to this building that is notoriously haunted that nobody ever gets access to. The Paranormal Research Foundation. This is a derelict mansion where supposedly in the 1970s there were all of these experiments done on people. The way the story is told is from frame-by-frame clips of this episode 13. So it's kind of this omniscient narrator that's telling you frame by frame what is happening as we go through it. Also, you get journal entries from all of the crew and cast. Also, there's tapes and all kinds. It's pretty much entirely in mixed media. For me, it felt like this was trying to be a Blake Crouch novel by way of Ghost Adventures, and it was not successful in that. One thing I did appreciate about this was the kind of behind-the-scenes reality TV show information. Stuff that you don't really think about when you're watching reality TV, like the pressure from the production company to make this good TV, which may motivate the cast to act out, make stuff up, promote mental unhealth, and kind of is the perfect setting for madness to ensue. I used to watch those ghost hunting shows. I loved them. And so again, I thought this was going to be perfect for me, right up my alley, mixed media, ghost hunting, reality TV show. Like, I thought it was going to be perfect. It was not. One thing I will say, I don't recommend the audio for this one. This is one that I absolutely think would be better if you read it and had your own voices in your head. And it's not because it was poorly produced. The audiobook was overly produced. There were sound effects, there were a full cast, there was music, there was all kinds of things to make this feel like a reality TV show. But unfortunately, in my opinion, the acting sucked. So, you know, what's the point of having all this other stuff if the acting is terrible? All of these characters at some point laugh, either just joking around or have some kind of maniacal laughter that happens. And every single time it felt contrived and cringy. I just could not with the actors in this audiobook. I could not. And I think that 100% contributed to my dislike of this. Also, the twist kind of goes off the deep end. This isn't your typical haunting story. It kind of goes to a place where I don't want to mention it because it's going to get in spoilery territory, but I'll just say that it's not your typical haunting story, and it was a little too far for me. The end result for me of listening to this audiobook felt more like listening to a friend tell you the entire plot of a book that they read and having to sit through it. Like, it felt so detached. I did not connect to any of these characters whatsoever. I felt completely detached from the story, from the characters. It just felt like it dragged and dragged and dragged. So there we have it. Let's move on. My next 2-star book is incredibly disappointing because it popped up somewhere. I read the description and I was like, oh my God, I must have that now. I immediately got the audiobook and listened to it in one day. I thought this was going to be amazing based on that description, but it just didn't hit for me, and that is Women Talking by Miriam Taves, I think is how you pronounce her last name. This book is based on a true story, which makes it even that more intense. Let me just read the description to you because I want you to feel how I felt when I picked this up. One evening, 8 Mennonite women climb into a hayloft to conduct a secret meeting. For the past 2 years, each of these women and more than 100 other girls in their colony, has been repeatedly violated in the night
by demons,
coming to punish them for their sins. Now that the women have learned that they were in fact
drugged and attacked
by a group of men from their own community, they must choose, will they stay in the only world they've ever known or dare to escape? A masterful tale of women claiming power to decide. Did it do that? Yes, but this starts at the end of the story. The premise of this is so much more interesting to read than this actual novel itself. Unfortunately, it felt like the author was afraid to tell the real story here. Like, find the story. This is based off of real life. Find the story in there. Find the exciting part and tell us about it. You know, the whole thing where they're getting violated in the night and they think that they are demons, and then they find out, that they are men, the men in their village. Like, I wanted to be in there for that moment when they discover that. But no, this is all after the fact. So they're having this secret meeting where they discuss how they want to move forward. Do they want to escape this Mennonite colony? Do they want to stay there? If so, what do they do? And it's very clear what Miriam Taves is trying to say about this is that these women, though they may not speak the language of their country, they still have a voice. And these women, though they may be illiterate, they are clever and witty and they are intelligent. They see how things work in nature around them. They still draw from that and use that to inform their judgment, and they use their voices to take that power back. So this is, I see how it's a feminist type of story, but it feels like this author was avoiding the real story here, was afraid to step on toes by getting into the deep nitty-gritty of this actual story. And it was just boring. It was just boring. I'm sorry, I get it. It's literary, women's fiction, but I was bored. It felt like it was pretending to be deeper than it actually was. It did not make me howl at the moon, so 2 stars. My next book is actually 2.5 stars. So we're moving up. We're doing a little something something here. That is the last one by Alexandra Oliva. I also read this one for my Black Mirror vlog that I did. I don't personally think this hits the mark for the Black Mirror category, but I can see how somebody else might interpret it that way. This, like episode 13, is also following a reality TV show. And this is kind of like a survivor show. You have all of these contestants, and whoever can survive the longest in this forest wins $1 million. There's no end date. It's just whoever's the last one there. So they're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But while they are out in the woods, there is some kind of pandemic or plague that is thrust upon the world, and they don't know what's real and what's part of the TV show. The way this is told is you get also like play-by-play, frame-by-frame of the episodes. You also get little kind of inserts of social media and people critiquing the show as it's being aired. You know off the bat that it's being edited pretty much almost in live time. Then you also get chapters from Zoo's perspective, who is our main character. Now, in Zoo's perspective, she calls the contestants by their names, but in the omniscient narrator reality TV show perspective, they kind of make up these arguably problematic names for these characters just to help you remember, I guess, or like the impression that you may have gotten from them just from watching the TV show. So I spent way too much time trying to figure out which problematic name was associated with the real person's name. Who was still in the game, who was out, and thinking that that was going to be the main point of this book, but no, it was not. It was not at all. This takes like a huge turn. I think the Black Mirror part of this book is about your perception of reality and how the media influences that. So there was that, but that by no means was like the main theme or point of this book. That's basically gets you to the halfway point of this novel, and then it turns into like this long lost love story, and the rest of the book is her trying to find her husband. It ends very abruptly. You kind of know where it's going to go, but it's got a lot of loose ends. So I just didn't love it. I did think the writing was good. I would read from this author again, but all in all, it felt like it lacked focus. Like I wouldn't know who to recommend this to. I wouldn't know if I should recommend it to someone who's looking for a romance, someone who's looking for a Black Mirror book, which I know I wouldn't recommend it for that, or somebody who's looking for like a dystopian, apocalyptic, end of the world book. I don't know. It's all three of those things and none of them at the same time. It was fine, but I don't, nah, no, pass. So let's move into the 3 stars. Please. Oh my goodness. My next book is actually 3.5 stars. It is my only book in the 3-star range, and that is Dark Tales by Shirley Jackson. And this is an anthology, so it's a bunch of short stories within this little short book. I also read this for the Black Mirror themed vlog. And again, I don't think this is Black Mirror themed really. When I think of Black Mirror, I think of a technology aspect of it. That's where you get that whole 5 minutes into the future thing. There's some kind of technology. It has some kind of dark consequences. This had nothing to do with technology, but it was dark. In some cases supernatural, in some cases ghosty. A lot of these stories were written in the like 1960s, and so I feel like this would have been really poignant around that time especially. But most of these stories surround women, and they are kind of what society expects them to be. And as the stories go on, we either put them in a situation where they are very uncomfortable and it makes them act out, or we actually just get to the point where we understand that they are not what they are seemingly on the outside. I have had not so much luck with Shirley Jackson in the past. I did not like We've Always Lived in the Castle. I did not like The Haunting of Hill House, though I loved the show. There were 2 or 3 that I really liked out of this collection. Some of them not so much, but enough to warrant this a 3.5 star. Her writing in general is just very eerie. It's very below the surface. This is not graphic. This is not overly descriptive. It really just quietly draws the reader's attention to what lurks just below the surface. And though I 100% applaud and respect Shirley Jackson for being so far ahead of her time and being such a badass bitch, I just don't connect with her writing like I do some other authors, and that's okay. I can still respect it. So 3.5 stars for this one. All right, we're moving on to 4 stars. Hooray, hurrah, hurrah, 4 stars. I have 2 4-star books and 1 4.5 star book. My first 4-star book is The Between by Tananarive Due. I finally read my first Tananarive Dew. I am so happy I did. It did not disappoint. I will say, okay, let me tell you what this one's about. We're following Hilton, and when he was a little boy, his grandmother saved him from drowning. His entire life, he's felt like he has had to do something special to live up to that, or like he's living on borrowed time, essentially. 30 years later, Hilton lives with his wife. She is the only elected African-American judge in Dade County, Florida. They have 2 beautiful children, and his wife and family have begun receiving death threats by this creepy dude that his wife put away years ago. But also Hilton is having these really odd dreams. He is losing touch with reality. This whole book is very much like a fever dream. It is a fever dream beyond fever dreams. He's being haunted in his sleep. As the reader, you're following from Hilton's perspective, so you don't know what's real and what's not either. So it took me a little bit to get into this because I didn't know where this was going, but once I did figure that out, I was hooked. I was so hooked because I did not expect it to go where it went with all of this, with these dreams and the haunting thing and the grandma and the thing and the kids, and like it was weird in the best possible way and haunting in the best possible way. This isn't a typical like ghost haunting. It's haunting of your past. This fits horror on so many different levels. It's speculative, it's familial, it's social commentary, it's super eerie and emotional at the same time. The ending was very unexpected and sad, but also like perfect. Like it just fit right back in so perfectly into the story and made so much sense. Like it comes full circle. And this was written in 1995, which is so crazy because a lot of the racial issues that come up in here are unfortunately and devastatingly still a thing today, still relevant today. The only thing that kind of ages this a little bit is that this was within the AIDS epidemic, but the plot, it still makes sense and it still plays out in a way that you're like, okay, I see what you did there. So I'm very excited to read more books from Tananarive Dew. My next 4-star book is Follow Me to Ground. This is by Sue Rainsford. It is a debut weird ass little novella and I loved it. I read the first chapter of this for my Try a Chapter Reading Weird books. I'll link that above and below if you're interested in watching that because there's some gems in there. This is about this otherworldly young woman, Ada. She and her father live together and they heal people. They call the people that they heal cures, which are basically humans because her and her father are not humans. The writing in here was so beautiful. I really don't even know how to describe this one, to be honest. It's weird as hell. But Ada ends up having an affair with this cure, Samson. Her dad does not like Samson. So she is kind of stuck between this old life that she's lived and like feeling a little bit selfish and maybe doing something for herself once and maybe trying to become this like whole person or whatever she is. The way that they heal people is they like reach in. There's a lot of magical realism in here. You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. They like reach into people's bodies, take out their parts, take out the sickness. And if they're really sick, they have to bury them in the ground, which is like almost like its own character in this story. This had really dark themes, but it didn't like hit you in the face with it, but some really, really dark themes in here. So you may want to check trigger warnings for this one, but it does not go into detail about it. And that's kind of the twist of this. If there is a twist, I saw it coming from a mile away. If anything, I wish it would have kind of slapped me across the face a little bit harder with that twist, but I liked that it even brought that up into the commentary within this book. This character, Ada, really reminded me of the character from Where the Crawdads Sing. I didn't love that novel, but her character is very much, she's almost naive. She's this outcast, outsider. She doesn't have any kind of formal education and she doesn't have any kind of societal pressure on her, so she's just living her life however she sees fit. And she really does challenge these ideas of womanhood and our expectations of that. There are also little interspliced chapters where we get interview-style comments from the townspeople who talk about just their impression of Ada as we go through the story. The way it's told is just really interesting. It's like these little short vignettes. It's odd as fuck, but really, really well done. And while I did see that one twist coming, there are other places that this story goes that I did not expect. And it was delightful in a very dark way. definitely recommend if you like weird books, you need to, like, it's a must read. Lastly, I have one 4.5-star book this month, and this is a little bit different than my typical, but also very on brand. And that is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I also read this for the Black Mirror vlog that I did, and thankfully, finally, I found one that I loved. The reason I say this isn't quite like what I would normally go for is because it has that Black Mirror element, has that kind of dystopian quality to it, but it also is told in a way that is way more literary than you might expect. I think people who like sci-fi and are interested in checking out something a little bit more character-driven, a little bit more literary, should definitely check this out. The description is very vague. I own this. It sat on my shelf for like years, and I just did not feel intrigued enough to pick it up. But I'm so glad I did. We're following these students at Hailsham, which is this boarding school for very special children. And our main character is Kathy, and she's telling us about her life growing up there and her present day, and the friends that she meets along the way, Tommy and Ruth. The kind of Black Mirror-esque twist of this is so interesting. It could be sci-fi, it could be dystopian, it could be literary, it could be so many things. It's very genre-bending. But the kind of tone of this is very much like English countryside, grass in the wind, academia. It's not what you would expect. It's so hard for me to talk about this without revealing that, because to some degree I don't think it's really a twist, but also I don't want to ruin that for you if some people consider it to be a twist, so I'm not going to. You have this element of coming of age, you have this element of a love triangle. When they're in school, there's a huge focus on their art. There's a woman that comes in from time to time and picks out special pieces of their art for her gallery, and they don't know what it's for. And there's a lot of play on memory in here, because when they're kids and their perspective is so different or so unique to themselves, and when they are adults and they meet up and they talk about this, about what happened back then, so many things click into place. And it's like, it's so true to life that how when you have a certain memory and it sticks with you in a certain light, in a certain angle, in a certain tone, until you get context for that, and then it becomes something completely different, and you never would have realized it without seeing this other point of view. And so there's a lot of this like back and forth between like what was reality, what were they really doing in this school, what are they there for, where are their parents? It just took me there, it hit, and I highly recommend this one if you're interested at all. It's, again, not a super long book, you know, just under 300 pages, I think. And I'm definitely interested in checking out more from this author. This, again, first time I've read anything from this author, so super happy with that one. Those are the 9 books that I read in February. I'm hoping that I'm gonna have some more good recommendations for you guys next month. So far, I've read a couple good ones, so holding out hope. If you watched this to the end, maybe put a book emoji for this like boarding school. Also, it's a book. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you haven't already. I truly appreciate each and every single one of you. And that's gonna be it for me today. So don't forget that life is short. So read Riley. Cheers and goodbye.